Protein, protein, protein. We see them in protein powders, we see them in protein granola bars, and now the latest, protein popcorn. Why is it that we as parents are so obsessed about protein in kids? So in this episode, we're going to talk all about protein powders. What's the truth behind this trend? What parents need to know. Welcome back to another episode of Messy Bites. I'm Marina Chaparro, your host, pediatric registered dietitian, fellow mom in the trenches with you. And honestly, I think as Americans, we're definitely very obsessed with protein. I think right now protein is getting all the attention in the world, and protein powders seem to be a question, a concern for many parents. So let's talk about protein powders for kids, because this is a question and an area that I think for a lot of us, including myself, we are worried. And I don't know if we're worried because we're constantly bombarded with protein messages, or where is this fear coming from? How much protein does your child really need? The good thing is that in the United States, you are rarely going to see protein deficiency in kids. So that's the good news, is that for the most part, most of our kids are consuming enough protein. So I'm going to break down how much protein by age your kid might need. So listen up. Kids ages 1 to 3, honestly, they need very little protein. It's around 13 grams a day. And you're like, wait, what does this mean? Hold that thought, because I'm gonna break it down by what it means with real food. If you have a kid from 4 to 8 years old, 19 grams a day. More like of a school age, 9 to 13, we're jumping to 34, and teens are going to need a little bit more. If you have boys, anywhere from 52 grams, and girls around 46. So if you're like, okay, great, you just told me numbers, Marina. What does this mean in real life? Don't you worry. So one egg has around 6 grams of protein. One glass of milk, right? 8 ounces of milk, 8 grams. Chicken nuggets, right? Your kid's maybe favorite food. Maybe one chicken tender could have anywhere from 3 to 5 grams. So if we put that into perspective, if you have a toddler, 1 to 3, which is oftentimes when I think the worry starts to happen, because they're into this picky eating phase, and for many kids, the textures of animal-based proteins, they're harder to chew. So that's when we as parents become a little panicky. If you have a toddler, that means that all they need in the entire day would be 1 glass of milk, 1 egg, and 2 chicken nuggets. So let me give you some other examples so you have a better idea and you can kind of maybe relax. You're like, oh, okay, my kid definitely eats that. So a yogurt. Not necessarily a Greek yogurt. If you have a Greek yogurt, it could have anywhere from 13 grams of Greek yogurt, which is exactly what a toddler needs. Edamame, a great source of plant-based protein, also has fiber. 1/3 of a cup of edamame, 6 grams of protein. Peas, frozen peas, one of my favorite all-time go-to plant-based foods. When I don't have anything in the fridge, I'm like, we're having peas for dinner. 4 grams. Half a cup would have 4 grams. Black beans, half a cup, 9 grams. Teaspoon of peanut butter, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, 7 grams of protein. So a lot of everyday regular foods are gonna have at least some type of protein. And when we put them together, most likely your kid is eating enough. So I hope this gives you a more realistic idea of, oh, okay, my kid doesn't need that much protein. And actually, these are very common types of food that my kid will eat. So that's the good news. Now, let's talk about protein powders. Are they safe? And what's the problem the way I see it? The answer is yes, they are safe in general. However, and there's a big however, not all protein powders are the same. And the main thing is that they're not regulated by the FDA. They're considered just like any other type of vitamin or supplement. So there could be a lot of variation. So most of our food here in the United States is regulated, whether it's food additives, the packaging, the safety, all of the above. Protein powders, on the other hand, are not. And that's the part that makes me like, ugh, we just don't know. So that's one. Yes, they're safe, but they're not regulated. The second part is that most protein powders out there are not formulated for kids in mind. And this is a huge one. So if you're a parent, you're like, oh, I have, every morning I have a smoothie and it's a very clean type of protein powder. I want you to look at the back. Maybe pause this, go get it, look at the back. On average, they're gonna have about 1 scoop, 20 to 25 grams of protein. So like I said initially, that could be enough to meet their needs or even more than what they need. And so that's the thing, that I don't want to overload your kid with unnecessary protein from a protein powder. So because they're not formulated for kids, also they might have some added sugars. They might have some added sweeteners, artificial sweeteners that honestly, they're not really necessary. And so I'm hesitant because of these reasons to recommend them. And honestly, for me, the main thing why I'm like, is it just marketing, right? Is it that they're tapping into a fear of parents because they're quote unquote not eating and we just want to give a quick fix? Don't get me wrong. I love quick fixes. I'm all about making feeding kids easier, but we're missing whole foods, right? We're missing whole foods by just giving a powder. And so I think from a point of view that's nutritionally speaking and even psychologically speaking and exposing kids, I still want kids to see real food and be exposed to real food. And there's another concept that's called the food matrix. And so if you've never heard about this essentially means the combination of foods, not just the nutrient. And so I'm going to give you more like the definition. So this is like the complex interplay between all components of the food, including nutrients, bioactive compounds, the structure of the food itself. So it's not just about that nutrient, but how they interact with that food, how it's digested, how it's absorbed, and that could impact health. So yes, we're focusing on protein, but if you were to give, for example, a Greek yogurt is going to give you a lot of other compounds. So it's giving you fermented live active bacteria. It's giving you the calcium, the vitamin D, the fat. And so there's a lot of new research out there to say that that entire food matrix might actually play a unique role in health, that it's not just about that nutrient, right? It's about the entire food and the bioactive compounds and what that does in our body. Same thing if we're eating an apple, right? The fiber, the vitamin C, all of that interplay versus just maybe an apple juice that might have the same amount of vitamin C. So that's why I'm like, we're missing out on real food. And I want our kids to have whole food if we can, right? So the marketing scheme of it and kind of the idea of like, oh, it's a quick fix, just give them this and he'll be fine. It's not the same. That said, right? As a pediatric dietitian, I think there's a time and a place for everything. And in some cases, I absolutely think it could be appropriate. So when could a protein powder be appropriate? So if I see kids in my nutrition consult that are maybe not growing appropriately, maybe their growth velocity is not the one that we want to have, or they're falling behind, whether it's growth or height, absolutely, we can talk about adding a protein powder that's appropriate for kids. If we have maybe very elite athletes, and again, depending on how they're eating, if we have kids that are very restrictive eaters or very picky eaters, and based on the types of food that they have, we're not meeting the protein needs. Maybe even vegan kids that are not, again, consuming other plant sources for whatever reason. So I think, there is a time and place. That's why individualization plays a huge role. But how to choose a protein powder for kids, if you're like, oh, this could be something. There's a couple of factors that I look for. Number one, that it has appropriate protein amount. So we don't want huge amounts. Anywhere from like 5 to 15 grams per serving would be awesome. Whey protein isolate, if it's tolerated, some kids might have some digestive issues with it. Or we could do a plant-based protein. That's also a great choice, whether it's soy, it's hemp, there's pea protein, there's all these different types of plant proteins that I love. Artificial sweeteners. We don't necessarily need them in a protein powder, so why are they there? Same with added sugars, right? A lot of these protein powders might have more added sugars. And lastly, caffeine, right? So making sure it doesn't have any hidden caffeine, because I don't want your kid to be rounding up at 8 o'clock at night if you're giving it at bedtime. So artificial sweeteners, added sugar, the right amount of protein, and no hidden caffeine. But of course, if it's something that you're worried about your kid's growth, just talk to your pediatric dietitian, talk to your doctor. And this could be in conjunction with other foods. So what could you do if you're worried, if this episode resonates with you and you're like, oh, protein, instead of thinking a protein powder, what could you do instead? A spoon of peanut butter in an oatmeal, right? To toast. You can also even sprinkle hemp seeds, chia seeds, a little bit of protein, not to mention fiber, vitamin C, great fats. I love it. We could, if you're doing a smoothie, this is one of the easiest things that you can do. We could either, instead of using water, we could use a kefir, a liquid kefir, again, added source of probiotics, protein. You could use full-fat milk, 2% milk instead of water. Boom, 8 grams of protein right there. You can even do that and add 2 tablespoons of Greek yogurt. We already have 9 grams of protein. So we have 9 grams of protein plus the 8 grams of the milk. I mean, you just transformed your regular smoothie that maybe just had some water or some orange juice and some frozen fruits to like a high protein naturally with all these natural foods. And another tip that I got, this is not from me, another registered dietitian, that we could, instead of using a protein powder, and this is a really nice hack, you can even use a dry skim milk powder. And I thought this was genius because it's so much more affordable. The protein amount, it's gonna be comparable, maybe 7 to 9 grams, depending on the amount. Plus, it's going to be a natural source of calcium, and it's going to be already include some key minerals and vitamins. So it's going to be vitamin D, calcium, so vitamin A. So a lot of other really important nutrients are already going to be in this dry skim powder. And now we have your Messy Bites real life challenge. So what could you do this week to just apply all this information that I gave you? Let's skip the powder, right? Let's forget it or stop obsessing about the protein and maybe just think of how could you include a realistic protein source in your kids' meal. Let's try adding one real food protein to boost your child's next meal or snack. So for example, like I said, if you're giving a smoothie, could you add 1 or 2 tablespoons of Greek yogurt? Or instead of the water or the orange juice or the almond milk, I want you to use a full fat milk, another type of milk that actually contains protein. If you're using a plant-based milk, you can still use it as long as it's soy or it has some type of additional protein. And if your kid doesn't like animal proteins for whatever reason, no problemo. Let's do edamame. Let's do black beans. I'm a fan of including frozen peas as well. And what if your kid is just a fan of pasta? No worries. We can even do a protein-rich pasta, like a lentil pasta, a protein-rich pasta, if that's all they're having. Or even in the sauce, we could have the sauce with some cannellini, some white beans for an additional natural source of protein boost. So there you have it. I mean, those are all realistic. I want you to try it out and let me know how it goes. So to sum it up, what did we talk about today? First, we talked about how much protein does your kid need? And we found out that for the most part, most kids are actually meeting their protein needs. And the problem with many protein powders we talked about is that they're not regulated by the FDA. The quality could differ. Some of them might have some added sugars or a lot of protein that they don't actually need. But we also talked about this marketing concept of replacing a powder with real food. And I think we're also missing on some of that experience and some of that exposure, not to mention potential nutrition quality and ingredients and digestion, what we talked about, the food matrix, that we can't think that they're the same just because it's a protein powder. So I'm a big fan of focusing on real food and just finding ways to boost it. I also gave you some ideas on real life practical ideas on where you can find protein sources. So next time that you're at the supermarket and you see everything high protein, or if all of a sudden you're getting bombarded on social media with all these protein powders and you're wondering if they're worth it, I want you to take a deep breath, remember what we talked about, and realize that most likely your kid is getting all the protein that he needs. So hopefully this episode gave you peace of mind. If you found it helpful, make sure to send it to your friend, to your comadre, and make sure to subscribe or leave a review of the Messy Bites podcast. I'm still looking forward to hearing your next Messy Mom questions, so don't forget to submit them. Until next time, hasta la próxima.